Hello and welcome to PMI's Uncommon Sense podcast, tools to improve your work forever. I'm Susanna Clark, Managing Partner with PMI, the performance improvement consulting and training firm. Our Uncommon Sense podcast is a 15-minute conversation with our expert consultants. They talk a lot of common sense, although much of it is not common practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. We want you to be inspired to improve your business through learning more about the tools which can help you succeed and grow. Thank you for joining me today, Des. It's great to have you back in the studio.
Great to be here.
Today we're going to talk about inner life long ago. Before PMI, you were in a quality director role. And
Indeed.
What I'm really interested to talk about today is, what do you see the differences are in the approach to quality and the quality tools that are used compared to your previous life as a quality director, which we're not going to say how long ago that was, but it was a little while ago.
It was. Well, I've been associated with quality and the profession of quality probably for the last 40 years. So my background is manufacturing and engineering first, then manufacturing. So a lot of my earlier observations about quality were related to those that were probably going to be specifically around manufacturing. As I move towards today, my observations about quality are on a more global and cross-sector scale. But if I go back to the 1980s, for example, how would you characterize quality in the 1980s? You characterize quality as something that was a department called quality's responsibility. Whereas today, if you were to take it as a generic, quality is everybody's responsibility. If you go back 40 years, quality was about how well did the product conform to a given specification. If you come forward to today, quality is more about how well it satisfied customers' needs and requirements and how it satisfies society's needs and requirements. So the context has changed quite dramatically in those 40 years. If you go back to the 1980s, you could consider, this is long before the age of internet. We had some means of communication like faxes, but organizations operated as little islands and little silos. And the customer were strange things which were outside of the business over there somewhere. Whereas if you come to today with the globalized world, organizations aren't little islands, they're interrelated and interdependent entities which have to work together to satisfy something and someone who is really very close to you and can make their feelings known quite profoundly and quite specifically to just about everybody instantaneously. So the whole field of quality has changed quite dramatically in that period of time.
I used to work in the pharmaceutical industry at one point. And I remember being in a meeting and there was a quality manager at that meeting, and he was trying to do what you've described, which is to bring quality earlier in the thinking of the people who were designing medicines and drugs and so on. And he said, and when that lorry drives through the gate, all anyone wants me to do is open the doors and just check what's on there conforms. And he said, it's too late by then. It's too late.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest changes. And certainly if you were to confine the period of change, if you like, for a slightly shorter period, let's say from the year 2000 on, because that's probably more relevant, I would say the biggest shift that I've observed is that one that moves away from the quality meaning or being product-centric to being more customer-centric and having perspectives about that. So I would go back and say into the year 2000, quality was probably more focused on the product itself, ensuring that as you said, you meet certain standards that you complied with the specifications. You complied. Whereas today, the focus has shifted to a more holistic, more embracing, customer-focused aspect, where we're not looking necessarily to just comply. We've got to get beyond compliance.
Yes, more aspirational today, would you say?
It is, and there's lots of things playing in our favour. So, I mean, if we go back to just again the year 2000, I suppose. So I can remember my time working in industry, where the quality management really relied heavily on, as you rightly said, lots of manual processes and periodic inspections. But
Yes.
today, where we've got lots of digital tools, we have the Internet of Things, so we can have measurements, we can have analytics, we can have real-time monitoring of processes, we can have devices that are going to predict when machines may be going into difficulty. The world is changed entirely. And one of the things that has led us to is to actually to recognizing the emphasis on certainly the workplace culture and the employee engagement in that. If you go back to those 25, 30 years, as your colleague was trying to do, was trying to engage people with, getting an understanding of that customer focus on the holistic view, not just the product compliance. But today, quality is really a shared responsibility across just about every part of the organization. It's not just about making the product. It's did the product get there on time? Were the instructions to how to use the product correct? Were the facilities for people who want to buy the product, was that good? Was that experience good? So quality is now a multi-dimensional feature. Whereas once it was maybe focused around the product and its goodness, today it is much broader.
And I think that's why it's always interesting. We do a lot of work with the CQI, don't we? And I meet
Yes.
a lot of quality professionals, and they absolutely love what they do. They're so motivated by what they do, which feels so different to what it used to be, because they are involved across the organisation and they've got skills that are enabling others to be successful.
Well, yes, and actually, now you've mentioned it, and you mentioned CQI because we work with them and they're great friends of ours. And actually, you also triggered me. Do you remember the book you wrote back in 2015, Suze?
It was ISO 9001 2015.
Indeed. Right. Now, that's because that's a really good stopping off point in terms of actually the psychology of quality and how it changed. And that was quite a stepping off point back then, because I would say that over the years, the 9000 standards have seen really significant revisions. I'm not going to go back to the 0521 standards that I was first involved in, because that would only emphasize how old I actually am now, I suppose. But the earlier versions of the ISO 9000, those published in the mid to late 1980s, these standards were primarily focused on quality assurance through procedural documentation and compliance to a standard. And I remember being told by one of my bosses as I was growing up in there, is document what you do and do what you document, and you can't screw up your audit. But thankfully in 2015, the update introduced this more holistic approach to quality, and it brought around this risk-based thinking. It also insisted leadership involvement.
Yes.
And that really was a breakthrough. But also, and it's something that plays very much to us in PMI, is that the standard in 2015 brought around this organizational context. You're operating in a business system, and is that business system right for what you're doing? I was never a big advocate of the quality standards up to that point, because up to that point, and even still a little bit today, there was nothing in the standard that said you had to be profitable, right? Or that you had to succeed. Whereas at least today there is that inference that says the objective of leadership is to continually improve an organization, really for the benefit of society, not just customers, for the benefit of society.
Yes.
And so that whole context of quality has changed quite significantly. So you take it in big chunks. You go from product-centric to customer-centric, involving people in the organization, in the actual process as well. But we've got today where we also have to worry about, and I bet there's people screaming at it now, so saying, well, what about the environment? What about sustainability? Quality in this sense. So if you go back, I think probably early parts of 2000, where you may look at sustainability. Did we really consider environmental conditions? Did we really consider ethical conditions? Some organizations did, clearly, but not all of them. Whereas today, I would say that clearly it's not all organizations, because some organizations are better than others, but most of the ones that we deal with, Suze, sustainability and ethical practices are an integral part of the DNA of that business.
Yes, and not because they have to, but because they see the value of it.
Absolutely. One of the biggest transformations I would see over the time that I've been associated with quality is this manifestation of continuous improvement. And it's really powerful, because continuous improvement is a really proactive, engaging, ongoing, enduring, and uplifting process for our employees if we create the space for them to do the continuous improvement. And the one thing that I know today, when you hear the experts talk about it, particularly if you talk about experts who talk about innovation, some of the greatest innovations have arisen because we've created the space for, given people time for, and given them the authority to go and do stuff that just makes something better. We've seen some fantastic innovations in our manufacturing processes, which have come from the guys and girls who work on the shop floor, working there. They got intimate knowledge of these things, and they brought their insights, they brought their wisdom, and it's helped organizations. So a really major benefit that helps with workplace culture and the engagement, and getting people to bring their brains into work each day with eagerness, is this drive, or this just simple awareness that each day we can make small improvements, and allow people to do that. And then again, that feeds back into that thing I was talking about earlier when we referenced about the human factors. If people can feel purpose and value in what they're doing, you can change the dynamics hugely. So the dichotomy when I walked into quality, which was quality was there as a policeman inspector, to today, quality is about facilitating the release of innovative knowledge, then that's quite transformative in itself.
Des, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge and the transformation for today. Really, really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Suze. Anytime.
Thank you so much for joining us. You can find more episodes of our Uncommon Sense Tools to Improve Your Work Forever in our Knowledge Hub on our website, or, of course, your favourite podcast platform. And do subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode, where you'll find links to more content on this topic, which includes webinar recordings, toolbox guides, blogs, and infographics, and our training page. You can always drop us a line on team@pmi.co.uk and arrange a time to have a call to talk about how these tools can help you in your organisation. We'd really love to hear from you.